So in this bonus video, we're going to look at where the compound interest formula comes from, but we're going to do it in using some numbers here to see the pattern in how we build up year by year. So if we look at the numbers we've been given here, we're starting with 200 Rand and we're earning interest at 10% per year. So in the first year, we're going to start with our 200 Rand and then we're going to earn interest 10%, 0.1 of that 200 Rand. So what we saw in simple interest is that we can factor out 200 Rand and we are left with 1 plus 0.1. In this form here, this 200 Rand was our initial amount, and what does this bracket do? This adds on 10% interest to that new amount. So 200 times 1 plus 0.1 gives me 220 Rand. Of that 220 Rand, 200 is my principal amount and 20 is the 10% interest I've earned for that year. In the second year, the key to compound interest is that I then use this amount. That is my principal amount. So I'm going to take this amount and then I need to add interest onto it, 10% of this amount, which is going to be another 1 plus 0.1. So at the end of this year now, we're going to have 200. If we multiply it by 2 of these brackets, then we have squared here. So on your calculator, you can see if you had 220 and then we multiplied it by 1 plus 0.1, well, 10% of 220 is 22 Rand. If we add 22 Rand onto 220, we're going to get 242 Rand. So we can see that we can do this all in one step if we just multiply it by that bracket. We can do this all in one step, multiplying the bracket twice. We get that same amount of 242 Rand. So now in the third year, we're going to start off with our previous output, and then we increase it by another 10% again. So now we can see that the same bracket is going to be multiplied by itself 3 times. So now we start to notice the pattern that is forming with my exponents and the year. We notice that every time we have another year, we take that initial amount of money at the beginning of the year and we multiply it by this bracket, which adds on 10% to the original amount. And so we can start to see the pattern in year 4. We would take our previous year's total. This would be 3 years worth of compound interest. And now we hit it with the 4th year worth of compound interest to get a total that gives us the value at the end of 4 years. And again, we notice that this exponent matches the year number. So therefore, if we talk about the nth year, year n, remember n represents our time, we would always have this 200 Rand that stayed constant throughout. We always have a 1 plus 0.1 because this 1 represents our principal and the 0.1 represents our 10%. And now our exponent is n. So therefore, if we look at what's in this general thing here, we said that this 200 is my principal value and 0.1 was my interest rate. So therefore, the output, the total amount, is always going to be my principal, 1 plus I, and then my exponent is n. The key to this whole thing is thinking about how do we increase something by 10%. We multiply it by a bracket, that's basically 1.1, 110%. And if we just do that year after year, we keep multiplying by that bracket. It's our exponent that changes year after year. And that's why n represents an exponent in the compound interest formula. I hope that was interesting. You never need to be able to do this in a test, but you should always want to know where your formulas come from.